last board meeting, we had lots of snow. So this is the celebrations that we would have had, and I'm certainly glad to see everyone here tonight. So Ms. Ostrowski, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good evening.
Good evening.
We are proud of these sisters that I'm going to introduce to you, one in person and one in absenteeism here, but for good reason. We are proud of them for their accomplishments both in and out of the classroom. We invited Emily and Anna Newby here tonight, along with their mom, Julie, so that we could recognize them for earning state and national honors and representing our school district so well. Although they submitted their essays last year, we are proud to celebrate them this evening. And I'll tell a little bit about Anna, who's an Abraham Lincoln High School junior, who is working at Old Navy tonight. That's her night to work, so we're sorry to miss her. We'll make sure she gets her award. But she entered the high school division for the Christopher Columbus Essay Contest. She advanced from the local chapter, state, and divisional contest to win the national one. This is sponsored by the Daughters of the American Revolution and the National Italian American Foundation. She was supposed to travel to Washington, D.C. in October to present her essay at the annual Christopher Columbus Day celebration, but of course it was canceled. She did, however, earn a $1,200 cash prize for her essay, so she did get some reward, and we're very proud of Anna. And then Emily, now a freshman at Abraham Lincoln, won the middle school American History Essay Contest for her essay on the year's topic of the Mayflower Voyage, again sponsored by the DAR. She won the local chapter and state of Iowa contest and also received a cash prize. Emily, could you join Dr. Morrow up here to receive your star award?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Mom, come on up if you want. Excellent. All right. Congratulations again, Emily, and we look forward to lots more great work from you. You're only a freshman. I love this. As Dr. Morello indicated, we postponed some of our recognition due to our virtual nature of the meeting. So we are celebrating both in November and December Employees of the Month this meeting. And next meeting, we'll get December in there. So we're going to make it work. The first honoree I'd like to celebrate tonight, and this is a program that has really been a big part of our school district, thanks to the Council of Schools Foundation and its sponsorship of both student recognition and staff recognition in making these awards possible. So we thank the foundation for that. Our November Support Staff Member of the Month is Jackie Schroeder, Hoover Elementary School paraeducator. And Jackie, would you join Dr. Morello? I'm going to read a little bit about what your nominator said about you. Jackie is such a hard worker. Not only does she do an amazing job with the ELP students she supports, but she seeks out opportunities to help others and always has a positive attitude. Whether it's an extra task in the classroom or volunteering to manage specialized transportation rosters, is that a thankless task? Jackie is always willing to lend a hand. She often purchases class rewards to help motivate students to succeed, and she will take time out of her day to get to know what students are interested in and then does research to make sure that she knows about the topic and can make a positive connection with the child. She also volunteered to be on the district's Para Advisory Board. Jackie is a role model as a paraeducator and an excellent ambassador for the school district. Congratulations, Jackie. Jackie, who do you have here with you tonight? Your son, and your son's name? Hi, Isaiah. And then, of course, Hoover Principal, Brittany Hetrick. Oh, excellent. And it just so happens that our November licensed staff member of the month is also from Hoover. So Julie Miller, 5th grade teacher, would you join us up front? Mrs. Miller arrives at school each day with a contagious energy. You know she's arrived by her laughter echoing down the hall. Her teammates agree that she is great about sharing any new learning and that she has encountered during her virtual lessons. She's also always open to new ideas to enhance her instruction because she wants all students to do their best and excel. This year, Julie volunteered to become the 5th grade remote learning teacher, knowing that this would be a huge commitment in time and energy. But just like everything Julie does, she has put her whole heart into becoming the best remote teacher she can be for her students. Although she's been teaching for 30 years, Julie's willingness to learn about new methods and materials is amazing. And our December manager at Carter Lake, who could not be with us tonight. But Dr. Murillo promised to drop her trophy and award by here in the near future so she could get it personally. So that'll be fun. But just so you know, Renita is one of the beloved kitchen staff members at Carter Lake, overseeing and coordinating the work of 3 other team members. She's the one comment that says there's no problem too big or small that she doesn't handle with a positive can-do attitude, and there's a lot more to say, and we'll make sure she's celebrated very shortly. So how about a round of applause for Ronita? And then our licensed staff member of the month for December is Carly Means, behavior consultant at Longfellow. Carly Means serves others with patience, grace, and care. She has great ideas of how to address student behavior within the classroom and always looks for what is best for the student and the teacher. Carly organizes the day's meetings with help and helps teachers with their data. As a result, students are making positive gains in their behavior and are spending more time within the classroom. Carly is always ready for meetings with staff and has a plan for everything. The student support team is outstanding because of her organization. She is positive in her responses to staff and students and always willing to go the extra mile. At Longfellow, we feel so lucky to have Carly as part of our team. She is truly making a difference through her role, but more importantly, through her goal to improve student behavior and class performance. Congratulations, Carly. And Carly, who do you want to meet tonight? And of course, Mr. Ray Lynette from Longfellow, and Mary Durand, our Special Education Assistant Director. Melina, the principal. Yeah, we'll get you all out by the group banner after. This way, Dr. Murillo and Chris. This is going to furlough to you. Thank you, Dr. Murillo.
Congratulations to all of our students and staff. It's always very rewarding for all of us to celebrate our staff and student accomplishments. So congratulations to everybody.
Okay, we'll move right on. I do want to really thank our foundation for their support in that. I call each one of these individuals and talk to them and congratulate them on being selected. And when I read a little bit about what's been written about them, they're just amazed that they would have peers that would, nominate them and the words and the kindness. So it's a great, great program. Next up, we have our Student Achievement Report. Dr. Borthman is going to walk us through our winter map results. I'm looking forward to the presentation. I think that you'll see, it'll be very, very interesting to see how our students have done during the pandemic. So Dr. Borthman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo. Good evening. It's my privilege tonight to provide an update on student achievement and our progress toward improving student achievement, or strategic goal number 1, with our winter 2021 map results. Before we begin tonight, I want to start by thanking all of our teachers, paraprofessionals, principals, central office staff that really worked hard during the first 3 weeks in January to make sure that we were able to test as many students as we could. This data is critically important to us. So it's important to our buildings as they're setting goals. It's important to our district as we're monitoring how well we're doing. It's important to our students and our families to provide feedback on how we're doing and how we're improving student achievement. And map testing would not be successful without the dedication of our staff. So we thank them, and most importantly, we thank our students for always trying their best and showing us what they've learned. Well, winter map testing really is designed as an interim measure to help us guide progress improvement toward 3 big targets around Goal 1. The first is that we're aiming toward 80% of our students scoring in the top 3 bands, high, average, and high, of MAP and English, language arts, and math. Secondly, we're aiming towards that 60% of our students achieve their individual growth goal. And last, we expect 100% of our students to make some growth between testing periods. And the data tonight I'll show you will be reflective of those 3 targets. So what I'm calling tonight's presentation is really the COVID-19 yo-yo effect. And if you look back at kind of where we've been this year, it's certainly unprecedented. And all of us have really engaged in education probably in ways that we never dreamed that we would be doing it. And our students are no different. We started the school year, came back in August. We started in hybrid. And for us, that meant that most of our students received 2 days of face-to-face instruction and 2 days of remote instruction. And then the half day on Monday was alternating between face-to-face and remote. And that happened for a vast majority of our learners. But there were still many of them who elected to be remote completely when we came back. And we started the school year with about 1,600 students in Virtual Academy. We ran that schedule, that every other day schedule, up through the middle of November, where we ended up having 2 remote days due to some spikes in quarantine and some staffing challenges. And we went to Thanksgiving break in remote. Came back in hybrid, back to the every other day format. Came back after winter break and started on site. And the reason I'm taking you through that is to let you know that that certainly is different than the circumstances under which we've taken this assessment before. What we've been able to see is that that did have an impact on student achievement. That intermittent, what we're calling kind of interrupted instruction of being face-to-face and then being online, not being able to have a consistent presence of teachers in our classrooms, the large number of absenteeism among staff that happened during the fall, that all of those things compounded really to have a greater impact on student achievement than really the closure did. And I'm going to show you some data to support that tonight. So, first of all, in mathematics, when we look at the percentage of students who scored in those top 3 categories, we actually improved by 1/4%. We barely maintained during the first 4 months of school. And that was, as you recall, when I provided the fall data, that is significantly less growth than what we saw from winter to fall of last year. When we look across our grade levels, what you'll see here is our grade levels across the bottom from K through 11, and the percentage of students who scored at the top 3 categories on winter map. You'll see that kindergarten continued to be our highest performing grade level, and second grade continued to be our lowest performing grade level. When we look at how students performed from fall to winter, the blue line that you'll see there shows the percentage of students in each one of those grade levels who scored proficient in fall. And what I would ask you to pay particular attention to is the gap between the blue line and the purple bar. That shows you the difference or improvement that happened over those 4 months. And for the most part, most of our grade levels either maintained or slightly improved. But we did see some change, especially in second grade and in our middle school classes, where we did not see as good of student achievement as we did in the fall. And so this chart shows the changes in our cohort from fall to winter. So same groups of kids who had 2 testing periods, both a fall score and a winter score. Any of the bars above the line show that there was an improvement in proficiency in that grade level, and the bars below the line show that there was a decrease. And you'll notice that it mirrors the previous slide with the most significant losses in second grade and then in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. We also wanted to look and see if this winter looked different from last winter. So what this chart shows is, again, the purple bars are how students scored this winter, but you can see that it was significantly different than last winter. So this is looking at this year's first grade versus last year's first grade. And for the most part, you'll see that there's a gap between how students performed in this winter versus last winter. The blue line represents the winter of 2020. And you'll see significant gaps in second grade, third grade, fourth grade. But our secondary schools, for the most part, either maintained grade level or improved slightly. We also looked at students meeting their growth targets from fall 20 to winter 2021. And our goal here is that 60% of our students are meeting their growth targets. You'll remember that this was a stretch goal that we set after we already met our first initial target of 50%. The good news is that every single grade level met the 50% goal, but we were slightly below 60% in multiple grade levels. The one interesting outlier here is 5th grade, which achieved nearly 70% of their students meeting their individual growth targets. You can contrast that with last year's fall to winter, and you'll see that that's the blue line. You can see that growth was significantly hampered this year. We typically saw between 7, that's why we reset the score to 60, because we had been seeing increased levels of growth. The gap between the purple bar and the blue line shows the difference there between last year and this year in terms of growth. We also wanted to look and see if there was a difference in student achievement between students who attended face-to-face or in the hybrid setting and students who attended virtual academy. And what you'll notice is the teal bar there shows elementary, middle, and high school students scoring in the top 3 categories in virtual academy. The one in the purple shows our students who were either in hybrid or on-site. And you'll notice there's not really a noticeable difference between the two in terms of proficiency, which that's something to celebrate, given the fact that we had the first time teaching in a remote environment. Our student achievement was comparable between the 2 different settings. However, when we look at the students meeting their growth targets, we noticed that there was a significant difference between students in virtual academy and those who were hybrid and on-site. The blue line shows the percentage of students who met their growth targets. And you'll notice that in each one of the teal bars, the students who attended virtual academy, their growth is significantly lower than those who attended those who attended on-site. So that tells us something, that while virtual is something that we certainly want to have as an opportunity for our parents, we know that face-to-face instruction is our most powerful weapon in improving student achievement. Lastly, we wanted to look at the students performing in the proficiency by subgroup. And so you'll see that this gives a kind of overall impression through our entire school district, from all students all the way on the left to several of our subgroups, going down from English language learners, those with special education plans, our Asian students, African American, Hispanic, Native American, multiracial, and then white and low SES. And you'll notice that we have, there's a significant gap between all students and those with a disability or those that are receiving English language learner services. However, when we look at growth, the line is nearly flat, which is what we would want to see. What that tells us is that if you look at that teal line, all of our students are growing at about the same pace, regardless of if they're in a subgroup of a different race or have a disability or a special accommodation. So that's certainly a celebration that we have. And a new feature I'm sharing tonight, for the first time, we've gotten a predictor due to an alignment study that happened between the MAP test and our state assessment. So we can now predict with a certain degree how well our students will perform on our state assessment based on their performance on MAP. And so you'll see that the purple bar shows where students in grades 2 through 8 where students in grades 2 through 8 performed in terms of proficiency on the MAP test. The teal line shows where we predict they will perform on Iowa assessments. And for reading, you'll notice that students are likely to perform a little bit better on Iowa assessments because of the way that the MAP test is normed. You're going to see later on the presentations is the opposite in math, that the MAP test actually is a little, or excuse me, this is math. You'll see in reading that it's actually the opposite, it's inverted, that test is a little bit more rigorous than the Iowa testing. Next is reading. You'll see that in reading, we had about a 0.5 percentage point decrease when compared to fall of 2020. When we look across grade levels, this data is certainly a little bit more optimistic than the math data. Reading has been kind of our leading indicator. We've been a little bit ahead of where we were in mathematics. Most of our grade levels are at or above 50%, and in fact there are several that are over 70%, which is certainly something that we can be proud of. When we looked at the change from fall to winter, you'll see that the pink line represents where that cohort scored in the fall, and for the most part, we were either at or nearly similar to the fall scores. You can see there's a slight gap between our middle school and then again second grade. Seems to be kind of a recurring theme. So any of those grade levels that saw a decrease here are below the line. You can see that kindergarten had a slight decrease, as well as our middle school and first grade, although second grade made a huge jump from the fall, that cohort. So that's a great improvement. Second grade was one that we have been very, very concerned about, and our high schools are slightly below, although 11th grade outperformed its fall test scores. So this chart shows what we looked at from winter of last year to winter of this year by grade level to see if we saw changes in how the students were performing at an individual grade level. And you can see that in almost every grade level, we didn't see a lot of change. So what that tells us is that for the most part, our students are still performing as well as they did last year in our individual grade levels. There are a few exceptions to that. Most notably, 8th grade outperformed last year's class, but this year's kindergarten underperformed last year's kindergarten. So we're looking at different groups of kids, but this helps us tell, is our curriculum doing what it's supposed to be doing at each grade level? Are we seeing consistent results from year to year? So this chart shows the percentage of students who met their growth targets, and you'll see that there are most all of the grade levels, with the exception of 3, are above 50%. Our first graders, our 6th graders, and our 7th graders fell slightly below 50% on this testing period. When we look at that as opposed to last year at this time, from fall to winter, you'll see that there are pretty large gaps between grade levels. And that shows really what happened during these last 4 months of instruction. that it was really important that our kids were face-to-face, and it impacted reading at a greater rate than it did mathematics. This chart shows the differences in student achievement between students who are in virtual and students who are not in virtual academy. Again, you'll notice for the most part they're very consistent, although actually in reading, our virtual kids outperformed our face-to-face kids slightly in elementary and middle school. But the same story held true for growth. In every one of our grade level spans, our face-to-face kids grew more than our kids who were in virtual settings in terms of meeting their individual growth targets. We also looked at subgroups across the school district, and you'll see that this chart looks very similar to the chart in mathematics. Our English language learner and our IEP subgroups lag behind our all students, and our racial subgroups are for the most part somewhat consistent with each other with a few outliers. The growth is still consistent across subgroups, which once again, that's something that we can be really happy about. We do not see large dips in terms of subgroup performance in terms of growth, and that shows us that our kids can achieve at high levels regardless of the circumstances that they're in or regardless of the racial subgroup that they may be part of. Like I said earlier, the predictor for Iowa assessments, you can see that the pink line kind of shows where we would predict Iowa assessments to be in terms of proficiency, and we are at or slightly above that on math. So math may be a little bit more rigorous than the Iowa assessment, and we'll see in the spring if these predictors hold true. And lastly tonight, we switched to using science math as our district assessment instead of our homegrown assessments. That was a decision that our middle school and high school teachers made because they want the same data that our English language arts and math teachers get. So in the future, we'll be bringing you comparison data about science as well. The interesting thing about science is you can see that in almost every grade level, we are already performing over 60% proficient. And if we continue on this trajectory, science may be the first test that gets to 80% proficient. We have some that are actually very close in some of our buildings right now. So, like I said before, you can see based on that data and based on the data I shared with you in the fall, the interrupted instruction did certainly impact student achievement for us. And that's something that we have some action steps around on how we're going to mitigate that going forward. A couple of things that we are implementing or will be implementing here over the next several months. First of all, that face-to-face instruction is irreplaceable. And we have to leverage every minute that we have with children now that we're back full-time to make sure that especially our most vulnerable students are getting the supports that they need, whether that is a pull-out intervention or a push-in intervention with a teacher, or whether that is special education services that we can provide with Fidelity now, or small group instruction, past classes at the high school, really being intentional about making sure that we're matching the instruction with the individual needs of students. Secondly, 21st Century is working very closely with our schools to provide after-school tutoring options for students with busing so that we can try to close as many gaps as we have with kiddos and extend the school day. Third, we want to continue our focus on implementing grade level curriculum. That is so critically important because even though we need to make up some deficits, if we don't continue to accelerate through the curriculum, this group of kids will forever be left behind, and they will forever be behind their peers, and we can't allow that to happen. Last, we have to make sure that we utilize all of the things in our power to make sure that students have opportunities for learning, and that includes summer. And so we are launching our summer program at an expanded rate this year. We will be offering services in mathematics as well, and offering both a virtual and a face-to-face component for students so that we can serve even more students who have need in our community. So with that, I would welcome any questions that you might have about our efforts to improve academic achievement.
Any questions from the board?
don't necessarily have a question, but it was nice to see that we've stabilized from fall to winter, that there wasn't as big of a gap. We're kind of bracing for that downhill slide coming into tonight's meeting. So thank you to all the teachers, the paras, your staff, everybody. It was great to see that we were able to stabilize and we can move forward then in the spring. So thank you.
I'd like to kind of also make a couple of comments. When we saw the closure, one thing I would like to commend Dr. Worthman and his team on is revising the curriculum maps and being able to prepare for this fall. And one thing Dr. Worthman and I talk about all the time was, remember, we were making 3% growth, and he was worried about how long can we sustain that. But I think because we were rapidly making progress, and we have wonderful teachers that have dug in and provided extra support and wrapped around students, and principals that have adapted their school improvement plans and working in support. It has been an all-in effort. So thank you, Ms. Hudak, for recognizing that, because our district has done some incredible things not to have the dip that we were worried that we would have. And so I am happy that we stabilized. I am very concerned about growth, because we want our students to show growth every year. But I believe with my whole heart we'll be back in this game, and next year it'll be a different outcome.
When's the spring testing?
That occurs, I believe it's the first couple of weeks of May.
And just to go back to our conversation earlier about parent engagement and communication, has there been any recent discussion about things that parents can do, or at least informing what parents should know about the MAP test? I just know in my household, when the reports come home, my wife is looking to me to explain it all to her. And I don't even know if I'm the best person, if I'm totally informed, so maybe there's something that we can do a little better to inform and engage parents with.
Yeah.
Understanding the MAP scores, and it's one point in time that happens 3 times a year.
Absolutely. And it's focused on growth. What we really encourage students to take advantage of is the opportunity to set goals around where they're at and how they're going to get to that next point. And you're exactly right. It's at one point in time. What is most important is what happens between those points in time. The being engaged in school, making sure that you're attending regularly, asking for help when you need help, asking for support when parents need additional resources. We have some very, very high quality academic resources for students to use at home, especially in our early grades. So Lexia Reading is a great tool that parents can use, that students can be on, that's self-paced and provides instruction. Prodigy Mathematics is another one that's it's more of a game for kids, but they're learning math along the same time. So those are some things that some of our early kiddos can do when they're at home if they want additional practice opportunities.
Again, I don't, as with Ms. Hudak, I don't really have a question. I just have a comment that I think Bill Grove, former board member, would be very pleased with our adoption of the MAP assessment, because his main concern was always that not every student had an education plan. We only had those students that were our most fragile learners who had individual education plans. And I see this MAP assessment leading our students to develop with their parents, with their teachers, with their paraeducators in the classroom, with their principals, an education plan that fits their goals. And I have to know that Mr. Grove would be so very pleased that every student has the opportunity to have that individual plan for their education. So I'm very grateful for this assessment tool, because it does lead a student to being an active participant in how they're going to receive their education. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up will be our informational presentations, and we'll begin with Mr. Hamilton with our Classroom 180. Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Dr. Morello, and board for the time tonight. I wanted to come in and present you a little bit of information about what we've done since we've last met, and then really what we're excited to really start digging into as we move forward. I wanted to start with the why. This is the very same why we had last year when we started this. We want kids to be able to come to school, and we want them to be able to learn and build relationships with adults. We know if they can do that and we can support them in doing that, that they can be successful academically. So that's the why we're doing the work in becoming a trauma-informed school district. Looking back at last school year, you may remember that we were using the Trauma-Informed Online Academy. We're still using the Trauma-Informed Online Academy. We really focused on the basic track of the Trauma-Informed Online Academy and focused on these 5 areas. Now, one of the benefits of the pandemic is that when teachers were home during the shutdown, all staff got the opportunity to go in and finish their training and finish the basic track of the Trauma-Informed Online Academy. So then, as I mentioned earlier, over the summer, we did a little restructuring in Student and Family Services. We saw that there was a need, and I was able to hire a social and emotional wellness coordinator. Thanks to Mr. Naughton for hiring Carrie Zimmer the year before. I went in and kind of stole her, and I think she found her right seat on the bus. Not that she wasn't an amazing Sam, but the work she's doing now is really good. So I'm going to introduce Carrie, and she's going to talk about what she's been doing this school year with the schools.
Thanks, Tim. Like Tim mentioned, the work that I get to do now and the work that I do daily is really honorable work, and it fills my heart. I think it's really important work that we're serving the whole child, so I really appreciate and I enjoy coming to work every day with Tim. So, not really. He knows it. I say it every day. I love my job. So, this fall, what we were able to do was really, for any of the teachers and the staff that didn't complete the training from last year, we let them focus on the basic training and get that completed. They also moved on to the advanced track, and the advanced track that we offered was on restorative justice. So I want to pause for a moment and acknowledge that this training is not just for teachers. This training is for all staff in the district. Whether you're a teacher, a principal, a para, part of the nutrition staff, or a bus driver, we strongly believe that having strong relationships with students is all that's needed. You don't need a credential to make a connection with a student and to care about a student day to day. If they're coming in and they appear different than they were the day before, to check in with them. It's often our bus drivers and our nutrition staff that can see that and take a moment to pull them aside to make that connection and make the difference in their day. With that being said, I can see the packets on your desk. There's a sign-in sheet with your username and information. You have access to. If you, as a board member, are interested in logging in and seeing this training that everybody has access to, you're welcome to do that. So as I mentioned in the fall, the focus was completing the basic training, and really we encouraged a specific piece of that, and that was relationships. So with the buildings being in a hybrid model, they were able to really focus on building strong relationships. There were fewer students, so building one-on-one was a little easier to do. And we keep hearing time and time again from teachers, from administrators, that they were able to build strong relationships, and we hope to see that continue through now that we're at full capacity again. The advanced training, they were able to complete that on restorative justice, and they had ample time to do that. So moving into the spring. So Classroom 180 is a continuation of the work in classroom or in TIOA. So last year we were impressed with TIOA and how accessible it is to everybody from anywhere. And this summer we were able to do some training specifically on Classroom 180, and this Classroom 180 we really feel is the game-changing curriculum for us to take us to the next step. One piece that I want to note about Classroom 180 and TIOA is we have a close relationship with the people at TIOA, and I talk with them frequently. They had promised a release to us in January, and they actually released it to us early in November because they knew we were so excited to get our hands on it and be able to start working with it. So that was kind of a fun outcome of our early work with TIOA, that we remain a close partner. So what is Classroom 180? Classroom 180 is a continuation of the training, but now it provides us a framework to move forward for implementation. Last year, we had the language, we had the vocabulary introduced to us, we had the basic concepts of trauma introduced to us, but now we have a framework and we can move it ahead into full implementation. So this is the Classroom 180 framework, and that was provided to you in the board packet. The content for this spring includes an introduction to what the Classroom 180 framework is and to Domain 1. Domain 1 is relationships and family culture. So this fall, we reached out to the principals at each of the schools to talk with them about their capacity to take on this new training this spring. And we're happy to report that most of them chose to begin this training this spring. Any that chose not to start the training this spring, we will circle back to next fall, and we'll get them caught up with the introduction in Domain 1, and we'll continue with Domain 2, 3, 4, and 5 next year. So this next slide, I realize it doesn't project very well, it's just too small. You also have a copy of this in your board packet and underneath the sign-in sheet, but this is the rubric that is provided by Classroom 180. So the rubric really is what provides us an opportunity for individual assessment, for debriefing, and for developing a growth plan. What we know about trauma and trauma implementation is that the work is never done. There's always some place that we can make an improvement, where we can grow. For example, a teacher might be really strong at developing relationships with the students in her classroom, but she might choose to focus her growth on something like transitional support or building stronger relationships with families. So it's this rubric that allows us this format to create the growth that individuals we want to see and can work at the building level as well. So thank you for your time this evening. Please know that I'm honored to do the work that I do, and as I'm beginning to get more acquainted with people in Iowa doing this work and beyond Iowa, I really appreciate you as a board and having a superintendent who supports our work in social and emotional learning. It makes our work so much more rewarding knowing that we can touch every child with your support, so thank you. With that, if you have any questions, Tim and I would be happy to answer those.
Any questions from the board?
Sure.
Other than how much did Tim
sorry.
pay you?
Yeah.
I go home with a smile on my face.
Well, good to hear. So my really just the only question I really have is, I know that we've gotten into doing this, and this has started while I've been on the board, but just what really is the plan for when we get new staff and people that come into the district now that we're entering past 1 year of doing this? Is there just this continuation where they focus on different parts and it just is something they do as they grow, or do you want to just
Sure,
take me
I'll
through
address
that?
that. So actually this fall, with any of the new staff, they were offered the basic training, and I actually offered CBU units to teach the new staff the basics and get them caught up. But I think moving forward, the Classroom 180 will be the format that we continue to train on, and we can offer that in CBUs moving forward.
Yeah, I think to add to that, the benefit of having the Trauma Informed Online Academy is it's readily available. So it doesn't require Carrie or myself to come into a school to work with those individual teachers. They're able to log in, just like you're able to log in and look at it and get the materials that way as well. So it's beneficial in that aspect.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Pretty excited about where this program's going to go. As you can see, a lot of passion around that. That's
Yep.
good. That's good stuff for our schools. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Stile to join us. His presentation tonight, Integrated Security System, is something that I've been thinking about for a couple of years. And Mr. Stile is going to take us back to our report from Strategos. And at the end, we'll have a little more conversation. I think it is our next step in securing our buildings. So I'm going to let Mr. Stiles, I'll stop talking and let you go through your presentation. Mr. Stile, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo, and thank you, Board, for allowing me to do this evening. The integrated security of our buildings is a tremendous amount of responsibility. It's about the safety of our kids. The overall project goals is to provide a safe and secure environment for our students, teachers, and staff, to control the entry into the building, record the identity of any individual entering the building with their district-issued photo ID badge as they enter, and then provide staff the ability to view the cameras when appropriate and necessary, and finally the protection of the district property. Back in 2018, Strategos International did an in-depth security analysis of our district. What they found on the side were two major findings. One, we did not have electronic door-controlled access. And two, when folks are entering the building, we don't have that photo ID and adequate surveillance as they're entering and egress in the building. The threat is real. When I was working on this, I didn't even recognize this, but since 2000, schools are the second most frequent targeted active shooter environments. Now, that may not mean a terrible amount, but since 2000, 57 school shootings that had one or more fatalities have happened. So the number one is Commerce, which only had 127. So that's the number one, and we fall in at 57. And one I would think would be too many, but when I heard 57, I was kind of shocked by that. So the first leg of this triad is the video surveillance system. And this is where we need to adequately be able to survey the grounds and those that are entering the building, and then be able to essentially identify who's on site. What I have listed up there is kind of current district policies of how we're doing some of these things, but we're not able to adequately tie the video system into our door access system at this point. The access and control system, essentially we're going to have card readers at every main entry door. We would also have the ability to unlock these doors when students are first entering the building and then at the end of the day. During the normal day, if you don't have a district-issued badge, you would be able to be buzzed in by viewing your video. The final thing under the system is we would be able to remotely lock any building down at any given moment as soon as a threat became available. The intrusion detection system, currently we have a very antiquated intrusion detection system, and that includes for your fire, your motion, and also for your chillers and coolers. It has no way to integrate with the video or an access control system. What I have learned is that facilities and maintenance take on a lot of bogus calls, essentially. And then it does not, and the current system does not have the ability with the photo ID again to disarm or arm the building. We currently use keypads. What's scary about that is right now with this type of system, we could disable somebody's access to a building in a matter of moments. With the keypad, we have to put in a service ticket. It takes anywhere from 24 hours all the way up through weeks at a time, depending on who and what sees that. Very scary when you're thinking about student safety. So, the final result is we want to implement the integrated security system. Why? Because it provides a safe and secure environment for our students and staff by combining all three legs of the system. And the other thing is it's an ease of use for our staff. Currently, you cannot view our video on our Chromebooks. The vast majority of our staff have Chromebooks. So what ends up happening, if an administrator needs to view video, it can take up to, it's usually done by my staff, and the quickest we can do that's about 4 hours. The new system, it could be done in less than 15 minutes. The other thing is making sure that we can secure our building after hours. The proposed cost for this project, as you can see broken down by the three layers of the security, is a little over $2.2 million.
So, are you finished now? I didn't know if you were finished.
Sorry.
So if you'll go back to that, one thing is, as we've looked through this, and John has done a lot of work, really, and working with support of Travis and Daryl to really look at this and try to get the best cost that we could get. Of course, we'll put an RFP out. If the board feels like this is something they'd like to see us move forward. I know that it looks like quite a bit of funding would go for securing. This would be all of our buildings. This would be for across the district, every school in our, right now we have this at Kern,
Correct.
Madison campus, and we just finished TJ.
And we haven't done the video though.
Okay, so we still have the video left. But I really do feel like for the safety and security of our buildings, that it's worth the investment. And as we've looked at this, it is something that we could do over at least 2 years for funding. It is 15 buildings, John, that we're thinking about?
Correct.
Okay. So, of course, we couldn't do all 15 at once. And we would have to begin to look at prioritizing which building and how we would go. But it would be something that we could put over at least 2 years of funding. And I really recommend that the board, have conversation here at the board table, kind of give me a thumbs up that they want us to pursue and bring back more definite final numbers of what this would look like. And then watch us begin to take that final step of securing our schools. I really like the idea that our buildings can pull the cameras. When I was a building principal, I had access to my cameras. I could pull it immediately. I knew who came out of the bathroom, who went out the back door on me. This also will have triggers and alarms, so if people prop doors open, we know where the doors are open. And that comes to the panel, so then we know that somebody's gone out and propped that door open on us. The one really great thing, John, as you go in and out of Kern, what are you seeing up there?
I don't see prop doors anymore. That's an anomaly. I asked multiple people, our facilities folks and others, and you don't come up to that building either in the back lot or in the front lot and see a prop door, But years past, you always saw a prop door.
And that's because they have their ID. The other good thing is if we did have an incident, this fire, and we had to evacuate the building, we immediately know who was in that building. That would have been people coming into the building that weren't there at the beginning of the day, as far as they would, all of our teachers would be, and now it's just recognizing how many students we have as we get them outside. So having that database is going to be critical.
So, in theory, with all of our students and all of our staff, when they key in, we would have a manifest virtually of who all is in the building, so that if we do have to evacuate the building, we have that document that would allow us to make sure that we haven't left anybody behind.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But first, Mr. Gozar, it would be, the building would be off of who has signed it, adults
Right.
with that. Our students would be off of rosters.
Oh, okay.
Okay, 'cause we
But-
haven't, right. But eventually,
Right.
down the road, I would love to
Okay.
have something that, I mean, I used to work Dave Pringer on face recognition, so that when the students come in, it was take and roll, and I knew exactly who was in that building. That's coming, but not yet. But this at least will identify every adult that's in that building. And then we'll have rosters. When teachers take out their classrooms, fire drills, tornado drills, whatever, they should have that roster with them. And then we can head count.
Mr. Stiles, you said that this is currently in Kern, Madison, TJ. Is it being put into Wilson in this current project? Okay.
With one exception, and that is the intrusion detection. The intrusion detection at all of the new sites is kind of a combination of the old, and then we put in some of the new, but we didn't put in all of it yet, because you don't have, you can, like at Kern, you can unbadge, or you can use your badge to disarm, but you can't use your badge to arm at those sites. We haven't yet, most likely no. We would probably go more towards this system.
So this cost includes those schools that have already have it done, or does that include those? It's just the remaining schools. And the secured entry would be applied to all of the exterior entry doors?
All of the main exterior entry doors, and then when anybody goes out a door, all doors will have a sensor when the door is opened.
And any interior doors or just exterior?
There are a few interior, but it's not, it's very limited.
Okay.
It's really around the vestibule.
And all the classrooms, for instance, they would need to be manually locked by the teacher if there was a lockdown?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So we can quickly do a lockdown.
Right.
And a lockdown.
Could any of this cost of implementing the ISS meet the requirements of the CARES funding, or not?
Well, right now, it doesn't show up in what they released as guidelines. And Dean, you made a call for us. Did you hear back from them on that? Because that was one of the questions that we had too.
I have not specifically heard back regarding whether or not ESSER, but they said that they're developing a list of FAQs about ESSER funds and how they can be used, and they're going to add that one to the list.
Save money on
I was wondering if you were going to ask that question.
And that little keypad, how much we pay to change those numbers too.
Any other discussion?
I think it's a great thing to get some final numbers on. I would be interested also from a classroom perspective, Chris, kind of maybe is where you're going from, is there something that we can get a cost on if we're going to go through this to give each classroom something to help barricade a door, or a push-pull, or whatever the case may be, to help lock that down a little bit more, if we're going to go this route, just to expand it out to the classrooms as well, to keep our kids safe in the classroom.
And that concludes our presentations this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we are moving on to our resolutions, resolution portion of our agenda. First, we have a resolution for a contract with Educational Solutions Northwest. Is there a motion?
with Educational Solutions Northwest for elementary mathematics report.
Thank you. Is there a second? Any discussion? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes, and the motion carries. Now we have a motion for the class of 2021 graduation requirements. Is there a motion?
I move that we waive 3 elective credits for graduation for the class of 2021.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. And let's have some discussion on this. Dr. Merlo, would you like to provide a little bit of information?
Yes, I'd like to ask Ms. Smith to join me at the podium. Ms. Julie Smith has done a lot of research on this, looking at other districts, talking with other districts, working with her, as you notice, how important and critical this is for students. We have our 3 high school administrators here this evening with us as part of the discussion. And so I don't know if you'd like Ms. Smith to just kind of talk about how she, we got to this point, or if you'd like to ask questions.
Ms. Smith, if you could just provide some high-level information.
Sure, I'd be happy to. This really started as a discussion between the high school principals and I with concerns over the students who have a hard time recovering some credits that they do. We started looking at what our students need to graduate compared to other districts in the UEN. Some of the things that we found as we looked at that, if you go kind of back historically, is that when we, years ago, switched to trimesters, we increased the number of credits students needed to graduate. So they needed at that time 75% of the possible credits they could earn, they needed to pass those to graduate. When we moved to trimesters, we didn't change that. So it changed the number from 75 to now our kids need 80% of the possible credits. When we started looking around at UEN districts, we far exceed the number of what our UEN and our surrounding neighbors need to graduate. We know that kids this year are struggling to recover. Our kids who struggle to recover credits. Most of our kids have no problem making that amount and do just fine with it, but our kids that struggle are having a really hard time, and the pandemic over last year and this year hasn't helped them in that aspect. When we look at reducing that by 3 elective credits, and again, as you saw in the Friday notes and in this doesn't impact the core. This does not impact those critical core classes that we want kids, that all kids need to have, but we are asking for 3 elective credits. We know that right off the top, I think our number is 37. It could be a little bit higher of kids that will graduate if they finish their coursework this year that couldn't graduate it if they need those extra 3. So we know right away it impacts about 37 of our kids who won't have time to recover those 3 electives. The elective part is kind of important too, because a lot of these kids are not all, but a lot of them are from currently attend Canesville, and their opportunity to get electives at Canesville is harder because we don't have as many elective teachers over there, and it's just a harder process to do. So what we're really looking at is if we can level that this year for, and as you saw, it might even be the next couple of years because we have kids that are trying to earn credits now that will be needing those within the next few years that are, going through the pandemic as freshmen, sophomores, and juniors as well. So that's what we're really looking at trying to do is, help the kids with that. And, we also wanted to look and saying, are we making Council Bluffs work less hard than anybody else? No, even with that reduction. So that's why we felt pretty comfortable with that.
Thank you for the explanation. Any questions or discussion?
So the resolution tonight is for just this year's class
Correct.
and not for the next year?
Correct.
Graduating, if they're needing competencies and skills that they need, elective, I'll be able to make that up. No one wants to delay a kid graduation.
And they will still have had to pass 14 elective classes. So it's not like it's not like they're not getting any electives. They would need 14 instead of 17. Mm-hmm.
And they had fewer opportunities this year.
Correct.
If they were behind, especially.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes, and the motion carries. Thank you, Julie. And now we have a resolution for a SBRC authority request for fund transfer and loss of revenue stream. Is there a motion?
I can move that the school board review, or to request from the school board review committee a transfer from the general fund to the student activity fund of $44,598.03 to the TJHS and ALHS student activity funds attributable to the interruption of revenue streams for regular costs attributable to the COVID closure.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Would you like me to have Mr. Wilson provide a
Yeah.
little background? This is something that through the pandemic, that because of the loss of revenue, because we didn't have gates and we didn't have concession, that they're allowing us to ask for the spending authority. I'll let Dean will probably do a much better job in more detail than what I just did.
Yeah, this one's a little kind of a mess. I have to give credit to Dr. Murillo for pushing me on this one because she said there's got to be something we can do. So our student activity funds at TJ and AL have lost a lot of revenue out of gate and concessions. And so I got a hold of the person at the DE who works for the SBRC that would grant us the authority to transfer funds from the general fund to the student activity fund to make up some of that shortfall. And there is a way to do that. It's not as much as we want, and I don't necessarily agree with the way they were going, that they've advised us to go about this, but it's what they've said for right now. So, you know, what we're going to do is ask for what we can right now. We've got some other things that maybe we can put in place to help the buildings. But essentially what this is going to do is the board will ask the SBRC to grant authority to transfer money from our general fund to the student activity funds at the high school to at least make up some of the student activity revenue stream losses.
And Dean, really both schools lost almost $100,000.
Yeah.
Because of not being able to have their gates or doors open and not be able to have a concession. I'm not understanding why we can only claim a certain percent of it, but that's how we go from a couple of $100,000 at each building down to about $40,000. So it is something we're going to continue to investigate, but if we've been given permission to at least go after the $40,000, we're definitely going to follow suit with that and continue to explore.
Yeah, what they're more or less saying on the expenditure side is if your expenditure drops 30 grand, you save money. And if your revenues drop 30 grand, they offset, so you're not out anything. What they're looking at saying, if your revenues dropped, in one case, they dropped 20 grand, but revenue dropped 40 grand, they would give us a $20,000 permission to transfer those funds. And that's how they're coming up with this. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's what we're looking at right now.
And the purpose of putting this money back in the activity fund is?
The purpose is because they're still incurring costs for things like footballs or helmets or basketballs or whatever, but the revenue stream is not there. So we thought it would be best to help them out in this manner.
And I think also, Dr. Alvarez, in talking with the athletic directors, Jeff was talking about how he plans for next year off of this year.
Right.
And then he plans for this year what he should have earned. He's now at a shortfall for what he can do next year with uniforms and equipment and refs and all of that.
Sure.
We're at a shortfall that we've got to figure out a way to make that up.
And I think the IHSAA would be weighing in on that
Yeah.
too with regards to the referees.
Yes.
What's interesting about this is I asked the person at the state, hey, did I miss this? Because I said, this is new to me here. Well, we sent out, she said it was on our website as a letter to the districts, and we had something in the school business alert. So I went back and looked. Well, yeah, they have it on their website, but quite honestly, I don't go there on a regular basis to look. I wouldn't have any reason to know.
Feedback about their communications?
No, because I was trying to get her on my side. And then I looked in the school business alert, and it was kind of a cryptic reference to it that I quite honestly would not have picked up on. So I talked to my fellow CFOs only one of them knew about this, and the rest said, yeah, this is new to us. In fact, David Moon, who's our district controller, talked to his mentor, who's the CFO at Southeast Pope. He was telling her about this and asking her about it. If she knew about it, she said, I don't know anything about that. Yeah.
This doesn't affect our spending authority.
It will affect our spending authority because we're doing a transfer out. However, the amount that we're looking at will literally be 3/100ths of a percent.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Arthur.
Yes.
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 Yes, and the motion carries. Our next agenda item is to move into closed session. Before we do that, I just wanted to mention for the viewers that earlier before the school board meeting, the school board engaged in a work session to discuss our strategic goals and feedback that we have received on the strategic goals from parents and teachers through a recent survey. And we're going to continue this conversation at a virtual town hall meeting on February 16th at 6:30. And more information can be found on the school district's website for that. So we invite all members of the community to attend and learn about our strategic goals and ask questions. All of this information will be used with the board moving forward and informing the board and cabinet on developing goals for the future. And I failed to mention this at the last school board meeting, but our work session in January focused on a facilitated conversation with the board and administrators on equity as part of the beginning of an ongoing conversation about how the school district values diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I look forward to more of that conversation moving forward. So just wanted to make sure that the viewers knew about those two parts of the board's work. Now we have a resolution to go into closed session. Is there a motion?
I move that the board exercise our ability to go into closed session as provided in section 21.5, parent 1, parent I of the Open Meetings Law, be conducted to evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose performance is being considered to prevent needless and irreparable injury to that individual's reputation, and that the individual has requested a closed session.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Any discussion? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and the motion carries.